graphing. So this is a section that's all about graphing. When I was talking about the 050 class, a lot of times what happens in that class is you might talk about this content here over 4 weeks. And here we might talk about it for 1 or 2 classes. Okay, so that's something to think about if you feel like you might need to get into one of those classes. We usually do that the second week. Okay, so we're going to talk about a slope and what that means on here. So basically a slope of a line is how steep it is. And there's 4 different types of answers. Okay, first of all, you could have, and you want to fill this out as we go, you could either have a positive answer, a negative answer, 0, or undefined. There's 4 types of slopes that you have. Now this is a big deal in like calculus and stuff because it's a rate of change. It's measuring how something's changing. And that's kind of a big deal in economics a lot of times. We want to see how rates are changing. So I just gave you this diagram. This is what a positive slope looks like. You're moving uphill. If it's a negative slope, you're moving downhill. 0 slope's horizontal, and then vertical is undefined. Okay, and we're going to kind of learn why that is. Okay. All right, so what we're going to start with is I'm going to show you how to compute a slope just based on a particular graph. So here's what happens. The slope we usually use M for. We think of it as the rise over the run. It's a measure of how you're rising, which is up and down, and it's a measure of how you're running, which is left and right. Okay, this part right here, we call that delta y. And all that delta y means is that means how the y values are changing. Y is this way, x is this way, okay? So if you look at this diagram, if you were going from this point to this point, this is your rise, okay? That's the y values, how far apart they are. This part right here is the run. That's how far apart the x's are. So it's a ratio of rise to run, okay? Does everybody understand that? Okay, a lot of you had it in your background, some of you don't, okay? So I'm just going for assuming that I got plenty of students who don't know much about this. Okay, so in the next particular picture here, when you have a point, and that's just a generic variable, then when you do the rise, all you do on the rise is you subtract the y values, okay? When you do the run, what you do is you subtract the x values. So what you end up getting is you get a formula for finding a slope. Now what I'm going to start with is we're going to start with just counting them out. Okay, I'm going to do that at the beginning and kind of get you straight on that. Okay, so let me ask you this question. By looking at that, it's going uphill. So is it positive or negative? The answer is positive. There's no doubt about it, the answer is positive. So what you want to do, and what we're doing on this is I want you to find 2 really good points. This is a good point. That point right there is -2, 0. You're left 2, and then you're not moving up. What's another good point? Well, right here. I'm finding one that doesn't have decimals. So that is over 1, and it's up 2. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're just going to simply count this out. Okay, so what you're doing on the rise, if you're going to go from this point to this point, how high do you have to go up? Just in your head. Up 2, right? How far over do you have to go? 3. Okay, so it goes like this. Basically, you would go up 2, and that would be your rise. Then you would go to the right 1, or right 3, and that would be your run. Okay, so what you would get on this is you'd have the rise is 2, the run is 3, so the slope is 2/3. That's what that means. It's 2 positive numbers because you're going up and over. Okay, if you're going down, then you got to use a negative. If you're going left, you have to use a negative. Okay, that's what it is. Rise over run. Everybody with me there? Okay, all right. Okay, let's look at the next one. Would you consider that positive or negative when we get an answer? Negative. Going downhill, that's negative. Okay, so this time, let's just start from this point and go to this point. What you would do is you would go down. That would be your rise. And then you would go over to get the other point. That would be your run like that. Okay? What is the rise? Just count that out. -4. -4. Negative. Okay, and then how about the run?
5.
That looks like 5. Good. Okay, so what you're doing on the rise is you're really going down 4, and you're going to the right 5, so the answer would be -4/5. Okay? All right? That's it. That's why it's negative, because you're going down. Yeah?
This might sound dumb, but doesn't when you write the fraction out like that, doesn't that negative make it the whole.
Okay, let me answer that this way. When you write a negative fraction, now see what you really have is you have a negative divided by a positive. And you know the answer is negative, right? So you can write the answer that way, or you can just write a negative in front of the fraction bar. It doesn't matter. They're both the same thing. It's a negative answer.
Okay.
So you can write the negative in top or just in front of the fraction bar. I think that's what you're getting to.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a fine question. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now, remember I said there's four possibilities: positive, negative, zero, or undefined. What do you think?
Zero.
Zero. Okay, remember it's how steep this is. This is not steep at all, right? Okay, you're not rising at all on this. You're just kind of moving left and right. So what would happen on this one is, like if you were going from this point all the way to this point, it doesn't matter. It looks like on that you would go to the right, it looks like 4. Okay, so that means the run is going to be 4. What's the rise? 0. Okay, you're not moving up at all. Okay, you're not going up and down because you're perfectly level. And then 0 divided by 4 is 0. That's why it's a 0 slope. Okay, is the 0 divided by any number gives 0. Okay, all right. Let's look at the next one. What do you think the answer to this is? Undefined. Remember, it can be positive, negative, 0, or undefined. Okay, let's pick 2 dots. It doesn't matter what the dots are. Let's pick a dot there and put a dot there. Okay, first of all, if we're going from there to there, the rise looks like up 3. And then the run, what's the run? That's nothing. Okay, you're not moving left and right. So that means the run is going to be 0. Okay, so what you would have is you would just have, you would not move on that, so it would just be 3 over 0. That's undefined. Remember, you can't divide by 0, so that's how that goes. Okay? Now, you can just know that, but it's nice to know how the math works so that you make sense of this. Those are the possibilities. Now, here's another way to look at this. Okay, a slope is how steep you are. How steep is this line? That's as steep as possible, right? If you want to make a line as steep as possible, it's just like climbing a ladder. That's infinitely steep. And since it's infinite, that's why it doesn't have an answer. Does that make any sense? Okay, that thing is as steep as is possible. That's another way to think of that, okay? Okay, so let's do the next 4, and let's just kind of, or the next 6, and just see what you get. Okay, rise over run. You do these in your head. You're just kind of counting these out and see what you get. And I'll walk around and see if we know what we're doing. So you want to be real solid on what the idea of a slope is. This is a real big deal at this stage. Okay, so what did we get back on number 1? 3 over 4. Okay, good. What you're doing is you're going up 3, and then you're going to the right 4. Okay, so it's positive. Positive 3 for the run, positive 4 for the run, rise over run, so it's 3/4. Positive slope. Okay, how about the next one? And your fraction needs to be reduced. What'd you get? Negative what? It's negative, so what'd you get? Negative 1 over 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick 2 points. I can pick those. If you go like that, that looks like that is down 1. And if it's down 1, that's negative 1 for your rise. Then it looks like you're going to the right 2, so that's negative 1/2. Okay, that's a slope. All right, everybody with me? Okay. All right, the next one. Okay. So again, we're going to go from this point to this point. What is the rise? You're going down what? Down 2. What is the run? You're going right what? 4. Okay. So that means you're going down in 1, 2, 3, 4. You would have negative 2 over 4. But what does that reduce to? Negative 1/2. So your slope on that's negative 1/2 also. Okay. The next one. Okay. And I'm going to just pick 2 dots just right like that. If you do it this way, you would have up 1 and you would have right 1. Okay. So that's 1 over 1. That slope's 1. Okay, it's just a whole number. You can divide that out. That gives 1. Okay, all right. And let's see the next one. What'd you get on this? It's perfectly level. That's 0. So that means like if you went from this dot to this dot, you would have a rise of 0. that the run would be over 2, so that would be 0. Okay, that's 0 slope. And what'd you get on number 6? That's undefined because it's a vertical, okay? So what you'd have, I'm going to pick these 2 dots here. So it looks like I'm going to go up 1. And what's the run if you don't move at all? 0, okay? So you would have 1 over 0. That's what makes that undefined, okay? So if you can count out the rise over run and form the ratio, it's pretty easy to do. Does anybody have a question about that?
So it's undefinable if it's either completely vertical or completely horizontal?
Only if it's completely vertical, that's undefined. If it's horizontal, it's 0, okay? And it all depends on where the 0 is. So if you have the 0 divided by a number, it's 0. But if you divide by a 0, you can't do that. That's undefined. Okay. Okay. Now let's look at the idea of intercepts. So one thing that I want to kind of do on this, I'll kind of have you go to the next page and just show you a picture of this. So an x-intercept just means you're on the x-axis. Okay. You have a dot right on the x-axis. A y-intercept means you're on the y-axis like that. And it goes kind of like this. So you got to review how to plot points. So like, for instance, an example would be, that would be the x-intercept 3, 0. You're over 3, you're not moving up. A y-intercept would be something like this. That would have the point 0, 4. So you want to know where the 0 is when you have an intercept, okay? All right? So what we're going to do on this is just locate intercepts and name them, just kind of get us started with this. If you look at this one, let's just do this together, then I'm going to have you just plot some points and make sure everybody knows how to do that. How do you write that that x-intercept like that? What comma what? 9, 0, okay? That's x is 9, and you're not up, right? Okay. What is the other x-intercept? How do you say that? Negative 9, 0, okay? Okay, all right. Now, if you look at the y-intercept, how do you say that?
6 times 0.
Now, 0, then 6. Y is 6. Y is up and down. X is left and right. Okay? And then the other one would be 0, negative 6. Okay? So what I want you to see is you need to understand that when you have an x-intercept, you're on the x-axis. You don't move up and down. So that's why that's 0. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? All right. So go ahead and I want you to I'm not going to check you on this, but plot those points. Go ahead and plot the points and make sure that you know how to do that. And because when you're doing graphing, you want to make sure that you remember how to plot your points. And just put the letter by wherever that point is, so that you don't have just dots all over the place so I don't know which is which. Okay. So you always just start from the center, and the first number is left or right. Second number is up or down. Okay, just count both things out, and when you're done, you got your point. So number 1, you should have went from the center left 4, and then up 5. This thing's kind of hard to see, and so I just want you to put like your letter A by that. The next one, you're going to go to the right 6 for X, and then down 1 for Y. So your point would be like that. Okay, and then number 3, you would go to the left 1 for X, down 4 for Y, so that's where that is. And then the next one, you would go to the right 2 for X, up 5 for Y, and that would be D. Okay, and then how do you do number 5? How do you locate that?
It just stays on the grid.
Yeah, you just stay on X, but then you just go up 4. You don't move left or right because that's 0. So this is a Y-intercept. So that one would just be up 4, and it would be exactly on the y-axis, okay? And how about number 6? Left 4, okay? You go left 4. That's an x-intercept, so you go left 4 like that, okay? So that's how you locate points. X is a measure of left, right. Y is a measure of up, down. Is everybody okay with that? because I don't ever know. You gotta be able to do your plotting of points if you can do any graphing at all. So you want to be really solid with how you do that. Okay, now what we're going to do is get into equations and graphing lines. Now what you're going to find in business is a lot of times you have cost functions that are lines. So like in my business calculus class last week, we talked a lot about what we call a linear cost function. So we're going to kind of build up to that idea. Okay, so what you have is you have the equation y equals mx plus b. And the two things you want to know is just x and y are just, that's a point. Okay, that's just a point. Those are the variables. M is the slope. That's how steep the line is. And then b is the y-intercept. That just means where you have a dot right on the y-axis. That's the meaning of that. So what I'm going to show you next is how you graph an equation without a graphing calculator, how you just graph a line. So if you go through and look at this, the first thing that you always want to do is you want to make sure that y is by itself. You want to make sure it looks like y equals mx plus b. So that looks like y equals mx and then plus or minus b, right? The slope is the number in front of x, so just write down that's 2/3. Okay, that's your slope. The y-intercept is the other number. Now I want you to write that as a point. So write that as 0, -4 like that. Okay, so what you always want to make sure is you solve for y, and then that's going to be your slope, that's going to be your y-intercept. And that's all it takes to graph something. So what you're going to do, step 2, once you find the y-intercept, I want you to just put a dot on that. So just go down 4 and put a dot there. That takes care of your y-intercept. Okay? It takes 2 dots to make a line. Once you find 2 correct dots, you connect them and you got it. So what I want to show you on this then is, remember, a slope is a rise over a run, and they're both positive. So that means what you would do is from the dot you already did, you would go up 2, then you go to the right 3. So what I want you to do next is just go from that y-intercept, go up 2, right 3, then put a dot. Okay, and do it a couple of more times. It's just a good idea to do it a few times. So up 2 again, right 3 like that. Now you can go ahead and connect that into a line, and then the line goes on forever. So what you're really doing is you're counting that rise. You're doing up 2, and then you're doing right 3 like that. Okay, the negative and positive in the slope tell you which direction to go. Okay, now I want to show you this. Students hardly ever learn this, but they need to. I'm going to pick a point. It doesn't matter what point I pick. I'm going to pick that point 6, 0, right? That's over 6 up 0. Now I'm going to check this point. So you can tell you're right by doing this. If you simply take the equation I give you, 2/3 x minus 4, just write that equation down because you need to understand what a graph is. I get students all the time who know how to make a graph, but they can't tell me what a graph is. Okay? So here's what it is. X is 6. We're going to take that 6 and we're going to plug it in there. Y is 0. We're going to plug it in there. And it should work. Okay, so if we do that, we would have 0 for y equals 2/3 times 6 minus 4. I'm taking that point and plugging it in, and I'm going to see if it works. Okay, so what you have on this, notice that this is 12 over 3. Multiply fraction straight across. 12 over 3 is 4, so does that work? Yes, okay. A lot of times I see students who don't understand that what a graph is it's all of the solutions of that equation. It is a bunch of solutions, so every point on this line should check. Tell me if that makes sense. Okay, it is a picture of solutions, okay? Don't just know how to do a line, know what a graph is. Okay, it is solutions. All right, do you guys understand what I did? Tell me. Okay, find the slope, find the y-intercept, and you graph using that procedure, then you can check a point. Okay, let's go to the next page. So I want to do a couple more, then I'm going to give you a little chance before we take a break to do some problems so I can help you and see if you're on the right track. The first thing that you got to do on this problem is y's got to be by itself. Okay, you need to make sure that the equation has the structure y equals mx plus b. Okay, so you got to know how to solve an equation for a variable. So what I'm going to do, and we did this last week, I'm going to move that 5x to the other side. I want the y on the left side. So if I do that, I'll have 2y. And when I move the 5x, what happens to its sign? It changes sign. So if you do it this way, be sure that you do that. Then we still have the plus 10. I just move that over there. Okay, now what do you do to get y by itself? You get rid of the 2 by doing what? Dividing. So everything needs to get divided. And don't forget to divide everything by 2, including the 10. Okay, so that's going to cancel that out. Leave you y. Leave the 5/2, that's the slope, that's what we want. And then 10 over 2 is going to be plus 5. Okay, so if you're not solved for y like it was on the last problem, do that. All right, tell me what the slope is. Negative 5/2. What's the y-intercept? 5. How do you write 5 as a point? I don't want just 5, I want it written as a point. So how do you do that? 0, 5. Remember, it's a y value. A y-intercept's a y value, so it's 0, 5. So you'll say, okay, the slope's negative 5/2. The y-intercept is 0, 5. Okay? Now, look at this. Okay? Top number is rise. What are you going to do if it's negative 5? Down. Bottom number's run. It's positive. What do? Right. Now see, that's a negative, that's a positive. So it's down and over. The negative tells you which direction to go, see. All right? So what you're going to do is you're going to count it like this. You're going to go down 5, then you're going to go to the right 2. Okay? So here's how you do your graph. You want to start with your y-intercept. So you want to put your first dot at 5, then count your slope. And don't start the slope from the center, start it from the y-intercept. So you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, and then 1, 2 to the right, and you should be at that point 2, 0 like that. Okay, so you ended up at the point 2, 0 like that. Down 5, right 2 from the y-intercept. Okay, you guys understand that? Okay, solve for y. First of all is what you got to do. Now let's check. Now don't blow off the checking. You want to have an ability to tell you're right, and you always can in math. Okay, so what we do, let's just write down the equation. 5x plus 2y equals 10. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to plug the 2 in for x, and you're going to plug the 0 in for y and see if it works. If it does, then you've got the right graph. Okay, so this is going to be 5 times 2 plus 2 times 0 equals 10. That is 10 plus 0 equals 10, so it's correct, isn't it? So what I want you to understand is a line has an infinite number of points on it, and when you plug them into the equation, they always work. Does that make sense to you? Okay? All right? There's all of those points on the line. The line has an infinite number of points, and they all satisfy that equation. All right? So that one you got to solve for y first. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Is this already solved for y? Yes. So tell me what the slope is. 2. Tell me what the y-intercept is. Negative 3. So you want to write that as the point 0, negative 3. Okay, so that's automatic. There's your slope. There's your y-intercept. Okay. All right, now your slope on this is a whole number. Remember, it's rise over run. So what you need to do is make that a fraction. If it's a whole number, put it over 1. Now, they're both positive numbers. So how do you count this off? Top number's up or down, so that's up 2, right? How about this? Right. Remember, top number is up or down, bottom number is left or right. So they're both positive, so up 2, right 1 is what you want to do. So what you want to do, when you count that out, you're going to go up 2, right 1. Okay, so start at your y-intercept. Okay, then go up 2 from that y-intercept over 1. And just do, you only got to do it once. I like students to just do it several times, up 2 over 1. And then you got what the line looks like. Okay, like that. Okay, you could pick any point on there, plug it in, and you can see if it's right. Okay, so that's the idea. Okay, so before we take a break, let's work on the next 3 problems. I want to give you a little time to do that so I can walk around and see if you are on the right track. Okay, mainly what I want to see is the correct graph, what the slope y-intercept is. I'd like you to try to check when you're done with these and so to see that you understand that. Because the second dot you get to should, when you plug it in, should check. That's the idea. Now remember, if it's not solved for y, you have to do that first. So that's one of the things I want to kind of look at and see where we're at. Make sure you connect your points. You can do that. Then up one right four, that should be good. Okay, move it over so I can take a look and see, because I don't know. Be sure you connect them into the line. Not just dots. Now that one, I think they're okay. Yeah, now when you have a slope, don't put an X. The slope is just a number, so it's 1/4. So, yeah, you start there, but then your slope would be up one right 4. Okay. So the top number's up or down, bottom number's down or right. Move over so I can see if you've done it right. So that's not make sure. And you don't have any lines, be sure to connect them in this line. And that one, because if you solve for y, you make that, so it's still negative one, so it's down one, right? Okay. So be sure that when you solve for y, be sure you show that step out. Okay. Just want to see this. Now we can do the graph. So just, you start with your Y-intercept -3, count the slope. Rise over run. Up down for rise, left right for run. Okay. Should be good. I think the last two I'm having you do, you need to be sure you solve for y. You'll start by solving that for y before you can find the slope of Y-intercept. Solve for y. There you go. Okay. Okay, let me show you one thing you messed up on. When you move that x, it's going to become positive. It's going to change from negative to positive. So your slope's 3/2. So just put the Y-intercept you want to write that as 0, -3. So it's 0 something. Okay. Put a dot at -3. You have that, okay. But then you go up 1 right 4 from that. Rise over run. Okay. Rise over run. 3 halves. Okay. Y-intercept -3. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's fine. My time is now to see if my students know what's going on. We want to solve that for y. So they don't say so much. One thing that you want to do, that's okay if you got a good background in mind. So you made a mistake on that. When you move that over, 2y equals 3x. Then divide by 2. So when anytime you move something to the other side, it's going to be, the sign's going to change.
That has an X and a Y.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run through these, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll kind of get into the second half of this section primarily here. Okay, it's already solved for y, so you should have a slope of 1/3 and y-intercept 0, -3. Okay. All right, so what do? You always start at the y-intercepts. You need to have a dot at -3, and then you want to go up 1, right 4 from that dot. So up 1, right 4. And be sure that you connect it into a straight line. When you do this on My Math Lab, you're just going to click. The way it works, you'll figure it out. Okay, you'll click on the first dot, you'll click on the second dot, and then it'll draw a line. Okay, so it'll do that line for you. It's pretty easy to learn how to do that on My Math Lab. Okay. All right, everybody with me there? No. Yeah? No? I can't hear. All right. Okay. Next one. What do you have to do on number 2? You got to get y by itself. Okay. So that means you need to move the 3x there. I saw a lot of you do this wrong. So move the 3x to the other side, so that's going to become positive 3x. Okay, don't make that mistake. Now divide everything by 2. You're going to get y equals 3 over 2x, and then plus 3. Okay, that's what you should get. So that means the slope is 3 over 2. The y-intercept is the 3, so write that as 0, 3. Okay, now when you do your graph, you want to go up 3 for your y-intercept, and then the rise is 3. The rise is positive, the run's positive, so it will be up 3, right 2 like that. So from the y-intercept, go 1, 2, 3 up, right 2, so you should have those 2 points on your line, like that. Okay? Then the next one's pretty similar. All right, everybody okay there? Tell me, I have no clue. Some of you are okay, some of you aren't. Okay? And I see this. I don't want to try to lose anybody on this. Some of you got good backgrounds with this, some of you don't. I see it. So what you want to do on this is you want to move the x to this side. That gives y equals negative x plus 5. So the slope is the number in front of x. Okay, the y-intercept is the 5. Okay, if you have a whole number slope, you want to put it over 1 so you can count the rise and run out. So what you needed to do on this was put a dot at 0, 5. Then from the slope, you want to go down for the run, or down for the rise, and then you want to go to the right one. Okay, so all you got to do from that y-intercept is down 1, right 1. Then you can connect the dots, or you can keep doing that. Down 1, right 1, and then you've got what your line looks like. All right, now I want to show you one other thing on this problem. Okay, let's take a look at this point right here. This point right here has an x value of 3, and it has a y value of 2. If you plug in the 3 and plug in the 2, notice 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay, every point on this line looks that way. That's 4, 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. You see what I'm talking about? This point here is 2, 3. They all add up to 5. Okay, that's how you can tell you're right and make sense of that. That one's easy to make sense of. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, now this is incredibly important that you get your graphing down. So in business, you're going to graph lines all the time. It shows up in applications continuously, so you want to make sure you have that down. All right, let's take come back at 5 after. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go down to this next example here. Now what we're doing on this is just doing this backwards. What you just got through doing was I gave you an equation, you gave me the graph. Now I give you the graph, you give me the equation. All right. So, can you tell me by looking at my graph what the y-intercept is? What is it? 4. Thank you. Okay, so let's write that as 0, 4. Okay, now let's figure out the slope. Now, what you don't do on the slope is just find 2 good dots. Okay, just 2 nice dots like that. Now, can you be careful on this now when you look at this now? So, remember, that's 2 there. So, what is your rise? What does that look like? 4, right? Up 4, what's the run? 2, so it's up 4, right 2. Up is positive, right's positive, so it's 4 over 2. All right? Now you want to just divide that out. So that's a 4 over 2 slope, so that's equal to 2. Okay? Now, what you want to do on this is the equation is y equals mx plus b, so now you just plug everything in. The slope is 2, the y-intercept is 4, so the answer to this problem, the equation would be y equals 2x plus 4. Okay, that's it. Okay, so if you look at a graph of a line, a lot of times you can tell what the equation is going to be. We're just doing that totally in reverse. Okay? Everybody with me there? Shake your head or something, okay, so I can help you, okay? All right, try to do the next one yourself. Just write down what the y-intercept is, what you think it is, and write down what you think the slope is. And remember, when you do your equation, you want to just plug in the slope is m and the y-intercept's b. Now remember, your y-intercept can be fractions or it can be decimals. You can use a decimal on this for the y-intercept if you want to too, just to kind of get an idea. So what do you think the y-intercept is? What did you put? 1.5? That's kind of what I think it is. Okay, let's just use a decimal. Let's just say that is 1.5. Okay, slope. Use these two dots. What did you get for your slope? Say something. Be brave. If you're wrong, it's okay.
I got minus 0.5 over 1.
Okay, you could do that, or you could just go down 1, right 2. Your slope is actually right, because negative 1 over 2 is negative 0.5. You could do that. So what I'm going to put on that is down 1, right 2. All right, so the answer to the problem, the best answer would just be y equals negative 1/2 x plus 1.5. Now what you have, Kareem, you have negative 0.5. It's still the same thing. Yeah. Oh, you could, yeah. Yeah, we haven't done that yet, but if you know that from your background, you can. What I'm trying to get you to do now is just sort of count it out. But yeah, you can do that slope formula if you know that. We're going to do that in a little bit here. Okay, you'd get the same answer. Okay, all right. So that would be the answer to the problem. Now, the thing that students never do, I do want to show you just one thing on this. So you have negative 1/2 x plus 1.5. If you took this point and you did this, if you could plug the 1 in for x and you plug the 1 in for y, and write this down because I want you to know this kind of stuff, you would have 1 equals negative 1/2 times 1 plus 1.5. Okay, I'm plugging that point in, and let me show you that it works. This would be 1 equals negative 1/2 plus 1.5. Well, if you took negative 1/2 and 1.5, you'd get 1. And if you don't know that, you could do that on your calculator, so that works out. So the thing is, those 2 points, 1, 1, and 3, 0, they will check in your equation if you plug them in. So you have the ability to tell you're right, even though it's pretty easy once you understand how to calculate the slope and y-intercept. Okay, does anybody have any question about how I got that answer on that just by looking at y-intercept and slope? We good? Okay. All right. Now we're going to go to the slope formula. Now we know what the slopes rise over run, but now we're going to learn how to use a formula so we don't have to count. Okay. So what we're going to do on this is, again, all you're doing on the rise is you're subtracting the y values. That's giving you the distance this way, up and down. For the run, you're subtracting the x's. That's giving you a distance the other way. So what I want you to do on problem A, go ahead and plot your 2 points. So go ahead and do that. So the first point, you're going to go left 4, down 5 to locate that point. So left 4, down 5, and then just put like the letter A by that, like that. Okay, then for the next one, you're going to go right 3, down 1 to locate that point right there. And then I want you to just draw a line like that. Okay, now what we're going to do this time, we're not going to count it out. We're going to use this formula. Okay, so this is basically what you do when you use this formula. So we use the letter m to represent the slope. And what we do is we subtract the y values. So let me explain what this is. We're going to do y2 minus y1, and then you're going to do x2 minus x1. And that's going to give you the rise over the run. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and subtract that. These are the y values right there. That gives you the rise. The distance between those numbers is going to give you the rise. Okay, so what we do, and watch this carefully because you're going to do negative 1, subtract negative 5. Now, so you have a subtraction because you're finding the distance between those 2 numbers, okay? And then you want to do the x's. The x's I'll highlight in blue here. So what you do on that is you just do 3, subtract negative 4. Okay, so when you're doing a slope this way, you're just going to do this number, subtract that number, that's the rise. And then the run is this number, subtract that number, okay? You can do both of them backwards and it'll give the same answer, but you need to be consistent. Don't do one of them this way and the other one the other way, or you'll miss it. Okay, what does it mean when you subtract a negative? Tell me. It means adding, okay? I'm asking because not all of my students know that. Okay, so we have that, and then the bottom is 3 plus 4. Okay, so that's what you get. So it looks like when you work this out, you're going to have 4 over 7 So that means the slope on this is going to be 4/7. Okay, now I want you to look at the line that you just drew. It has a rise of 4. Tell me if that looks right. If you start at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, does that look good? Yeah? Okay, what's the 7? That's the run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, does that look good? Okay, so that formula does what counting does anyway. The rise is just counting that distance this way, and the run's counting the distance this way. That's what that's doing, okay? All right, so let's go to this next one. So that one would be 4/7. Okay, and let's go ahead and do this next one here. Make sure we can do this okay. All right, so we'd have the point -2, 6. You would go left 2, up 6. That's where your point A is. Then you go right 4, up 6. That'd be your point B. And we're going to crunch out the slope, even though you may already know what the answer is. Okay, so what we're going to do is the slope, the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so what you do, I usually just go in this order, so I'm going to take this minus this. Those are the y values, so I subtract those y values in that order. So if I do that, I'll have 6 subtract 6. Now I'm going to do the x's in exactly the same order, so I'm going to do 4 subtract -2. All right, so what's the numerator? 0. The denominator is 4 plus 2, so that's 6. And then what's 0 over 6? 0. So that is a 0 slope. Anytime you have a horizontal line, that's a 0 slope. So I want you to make this connection on here. If you look at this, does that make sense that the rise is 0? You're not moving up, right? How about the run? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So see, that calculates what counting's going to do anyway. That's what I want you to see. All right, is everybody with me okay? All right. Now you can subtract backwards. Just be sure the top and bottom are subtracted in the same order, okay? All right, so do the next two. Go ahead and try the next two. Do your dots, and I'm going to walk around and see if you know how to do it. And just use the same formula. Is going to go like this. So you should plot, the first point is left 4 up 5. Then the second point is left 4 down 5, like that. So that's what your line looks like. So if you calculate this out, you're going to go -5 subtract 5, and then you're going to go -4 subtract -4, like that. Okay. So the numerator is -10. The denominator is 0. Because you're doing -4 plus 4, that's why it's undefined. And what the problem is really saying is, if you're going from this point to this point, you're going down 10, but you're not moving to the right, so the run is 0. Does that make sense? Tell me. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. Okay? All right. So the formula crunches it out for you. You don't want to just know how to count. You want to know how to do the formula, because you'll get decimals sometimes, okay? All right, now what we're going to do is look at what we call the point slope formula. And I'll kind of show you what you do with this. All right, so what you have in the point slope formula is, you know, m is the slope, like we've learned. That tells you how steep the line is. And then x1, y1 is a point. That's a point on the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, get you comfortable with how to use this formula to find an equation of a line, okay? So what I want to go through and do on this problem, first of all, to start with, I want you to do these two things. Go ahead and plot this point right now on the graph I gave you. So just locate that point. So you're going to go left 2, down 3, get that on your paper. Then you have that, okay? Before we get the equation, I want to have you graph first of all. Now, how do you do a slope of 4/3? What do you do? Up 4, right 3, okay? They're both positive, so go ahead and do that. From the point you just plotted, go 1, 2, 3, 4 up, and 1, 2, 3 over. And that'll give you that point like that. Then go ahead and just connect the dots like that. Okay? Now, we're going to find this equation of that line, not by counting or anything, because that sometimes is not accurate. I'm going to teach you how to use this formula. So go ahead and write down the formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, anytime I give you a slope and a point on the line, use the point-slope formula. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. We're going to plug 4/3 in for the slope, because we know that. And then you're going to plug in x1 is going to be -2. So in your formula, put x, subtract, bring that down, and then -2. So you're plugging that -2 in for x1, see. Okay, then you're going to plug into y1, you're going to plug in that -3, like this. Okay, so bring down and do exactly what the formula tells you to do. You're going to have y subtract and then -3 equals. Okay, so what we're doing is we're just plugging numbers in like this. The -2 goes there, the -3 goes there, and then the slope goes there. Okay, you with me there? Okay. And this formula, this point-slope formula, it's really the slope formula rearranged. Okay? Now watch carefully. I'm going to solve this for y, and then we're going to solve an equation. So, minus minus, what do you do with that? Change that to plus. Get it out of the way now. Then you have the 4/3. Change that to x plus 2. Anytime that shows up, that's adding. Okay? Now, what I would prefer you do, I can teach you the hard way or the easy way. The easy way is to get rid of 3. Don't distribute, because then you'll have to deal with fractions. So to get rid of that 3, we're going to multiply both sides by 3, and then we don't have to worry about fractions anymore. So when you're doing a problem like this, you want to learn how to do that, and it'll make it a little easier for you. So what I want you to do is, on the left side, put a parenthesis, and just multiply by 3. We're going to multiply everything on the left side by 3. When we go to the right side, same thing, just put a 3 like that. All right, and just by doing this, you don't have to worry about any fractions anymore. Okay, just worry about the denominator 3. Now go ahead and do your distributive property. So you're going to have 3 times y is 3y. 3 times 3 is going to be plus 9, like that. Okay. Now what happens here is the 3's cross out. Now let me explain this, because I see students do this all the time. Once the 3's are gone, then you don't multiply the 3 through. Don't distribute the 3 through, because it's gone. Now distribute the 4 through, and then you got what the right side is then. So cross the 3 out. That's why I'm doing this. So that's going to be 4x, and then plus 8 like that. Okay, are you with me? Okay, all right. Now we're going to solve for y. So if you get y by itself, what do you need to do? Make the 9 go away. So subtract 9 from both sides. Okay, if you do that, that's going to give you 3y equals 4x, and then 8 minus 9 is minus 1. Okay, now you want to get rid of the 3 in front of y, so what do? You divide. Okay, so once you practice the equations, it'll become pretty automatic to you in time. So what you would get is, for your answer, y equals, that would be 4/3 x, and then minus 1/3. Okay? So that would be how you would get the answer to that problem. Now I want you to look at the graph we drew and see if this makes any sense to you. What does that 1/3 mean in this equation? That's the y-intercept, right? 1/3, does it kind of look like it crosses at a third? You can't really tell exactly, but it actually does. It doesn't cross there, it crosses just a little bit below like that. And then that's your slope, right? Well, we already knew the slope was 4/3, so you were expecting that to pop up, okay? So you can always sort of visually tell if you're right after you graph. Just see if that number matches up that y-intercept. That kind of gives you a visual result and to kind of tell you're on the right track. Tell me if that makes sense. Okay, so if you're doing if I give you a point and a slope, you can find what that line is. Okay, we're doing all these things to kind of get comfortable with the equations of lines, because lines show up all the time in business applications. Now we're going to see that probably a little bit in the next class and into next week quite a bit. Okay, if we go to the next one, I want you to go ahead and plot these 2 points. Go ahead and do that right now. So you want to go left 1, up 1. That's your first point. And then your second point is over 1 up 2. And that's the line that we're looking at. Okay? So this is a problem. You're going to do basically the same thing. The first thing is go ahead and write down the formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. That's ultimately, if I'm asking you for an equation of a line, that's going to give that to you. So here's what you got to know. You got to know the slope. I didn't give you the slope, did I? But you can figure it out. The other thing you got to know is a point. Okay? So the first thing that you need to do on this problem really is find m, find the slope. Okay? So you can either count it out, you could count it out on this one if you wanted to, or you can use that slope formula. Let's use the slope formula like I taught you a few minutes ago. Okay, so let's do that formula. Okay, and I had you do a few problems on that before. So when you do the rise, you subtract the y's. And do it in the right order. We're going to go 2 subtract 1. That'll give the rise. And then do the run, same order. You're going to do 1 subtract negative 1 like that. Okay? All right, now let's see if this works out. First of all, I want you to look at this. What does the slope look like? Rise of 1, run of what? 2. Looks like a half, doesn't it? Well, is that going to give you a half? Yeah, numerator's 1, denominator's 1 plus 1, so it's 2. So visually, you kind of check as you go. So that slope is 1/2. So we know that, okay? So what you're going to do then, if you go over to your point slope formula, you're going to replace the m with 1/2. That's what goes in there. Now, what do you put in for xy? Well, you pick a point and put it in. You don't put both of them in. I would pick this point. You know why? It doesn't have any negatives in it. I would just say, okay, forget that, plug this in. So you want to put the 1 there, and you want to put the 2 there. Okay, the x value goes for x1, the 2 goes there. X and y will be a part of your answer. You want those to be the variables in your equation. So what we're going to do then is we're going to plug in, that's y1, so that goes there. And then x1 is 1. That goes there. And it turns out it doesn't matter which point you plug in. You will get the same answer regardless of which point you plug in. So what you would have here is you would have y minus 2 is equal to 1/2 x minus 1. Okay, you guys with me so far? Found the slope, and I plugged either point in. It's up to you which point you plug in. You're going to get the same answer. Now, what do I need to do? I don't like that fraction being there. Can I get rid of it? Yeah, how do I do it? Multiply by 2. So if I multiply both sides by 2, then I don't have to worry about the fraction anymore. So I want to do that. Okay, see, that gets rid of that fraction by doing that, so you don't have to deal with it anymore. Okay, you'll do that all the time on a problem like this. So you go ahead and distribute. That would be 2y there, minus 4 here. Cross out the 2. Okay. Now distribute the 1 through there. If you do that, that will be x minus 1, like that. So after you've got everything plugged into your point slope formula, now your goal is to solve for y. Okay? So if we're going to get y by itself on the left side, we need to do these things. You need to get rid of the minus 4 by adding 4. Now you're at a point where you're just solving an equation. Cross that out. That's going to give 2y equals x plus 3. Okay? Finish it up. What do? You divide everything by 2. Be sure that everything gets divided by 2. Okay? So that's going to cross out. You're going to be left with y equals, now see, this is 1 over 2. That x has a 1 in front of it, so you'll write that as 1/2 x plus 3/2. That's your answer to your problem. Now 3/2 is about 1.5. Okay, you do it on your calculator. Does that y-intercept look like 1.5 to you? Yeah, so visually, you should be able to kind of tell us, right, hey, we got the slope of a half. You can tell that we went up 1 over 2, so you can tell that's right. And visually, that looks right. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, yeah.
You kind of lost me there. Why did the first that -1 and the 1 cancel off?
Oh, what I'm saying is, when you plug in right here, you can either plug this point in or that one. You pick one.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter which one. If I put this point in, I'd get the same answer. So you don't have to plug both of them in. I just say to a student, And if you got a point that doesn't have any negatives, use it because it's easier. You're less likely to make a mistake. So it's not that it cancels out, it's just that I made a decision not to use it. Because it won't matter which point you use, okay? Okay, tell me if you understand kind of what I'm doing. Okay, all right. So let's try two problems here. I'll give you a little time to do these and see what you get. Now you want to probably on both problems, it's a good idea to just start by writing down that point slope formula, because that's what I'm trying to get you comfortable with, is how to use that formula. And you want to graph that at the beginning on both of these, and then see if when you get your answer, see if it makes sense to you. Okay, so that's how you're going to get the answer to those two problems ultimately. Okay, look at your notes if you need to. Help each other if you need to. So I'm going to walk around and see if I can see that you know how to use the formula right, and see if you know how to do the graphing and everything on here. Okay. Okay. Oh, you can do that if you know from the past, from your background how to do that, you can. And what you could do there is you could plug in the -1/2 there, and you could plug in for x, -2, and plug in for y2, and find b. Yeah, you can do it that way. I mean, to me, you want to probably learn how to do it that way and the point slope formula. Because the point slope formula, there's times when it's easier to do it. Okay. So it's probably good to learn a little flexibility on how to do it with those methods. Mm-hmm. Oh, you just recorded that? That's correct. That's okay. You have time to do that. Well, your answer seems to make sense. It seems to Y-intercept 1. That looks like that's got to be it. Because when you get an answer, see if it looks right. See if it looks like the graph you're drawing. Okay. 1.2. Does that look like that matches it to you? Just asking. Y-intercept 1. Do you have a Y-intercept 1 on your graph? I'm just testing you know yet. Yeah, that's right. But there's a 1. That's a Y-intercept 1. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is when you get an answer, see if it matches what that graph is saying then. Kind of messing up when you're trying to solve that for y. What is your final answer? -1/2 x. It should be plus 1. Yeah. Isn't it? Okay. I can't really see on your paper how your arithmetic yet. I'm a little skeptical of this one. Yeah, 0, -430. That y-intercept looks like it's close to -4. So if you look at that, you have a y-intercept of -2/3, which is like there. So I can pretty well tell that one's not right. So you need to look at it or go back and look at your work and see if you can correct that. Yeah, see what you want to do is I would write this as -1/2 and then x plus 2. because of that minus minus. Take care of that. And then when you multiply by 2, then you'll have negative 1x minus 2. So a negative 1/2 x. See, but because you're not writing that step, that's what's causing that to be off a little bit. And you don't need to do the slope because they gave it to you.
Oh,
Okay? So I gave you a slope, so you don't need to worry about it. On that second problem you do. That looks like that matches that to me, Y-intercept of 1. That's probably there. That looks like Y-intercept -4, so I'm probably on the right track there. Okay. Looks like on the right track. The second one, you want to find the slope first.
okay.
I think yours are okay. They seem to be logical that they match up with this, and that's one of the things I want you to do. Let me see what you got so far. I can tell by looking if you're right or not. That one's off a little bit. That would have been +1. So you want, when you multiply, you want to be careful about how you multiply by 2 to get rid of the fraction. I think you missed that. That should be really, you should have gone +2. And when you multiply by this, to get rid of the 2, you would have negative 1x minus 2. So the 2 would go away. Yeah, so that's where you missed it. Okay. What do you got here, sir? Yeah, that's good. That seems to match that to me. I'm just going to shut that next one and see if it makes sense.
No, that's +1.
They're having trouble getting rid of the 2. So you've got y minus 2 equals negative 1/2 x minus negative 2. Yeah, see, x minus negative 2. See, you're missing that. Because the formula says subtract x minus x. So you have y minus 2 equals negative 1/2 x plus 2. So which one is it? Now, so I'm using the formula, right? Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So what I'm saying is you're going to say x minus negative 2. Minus a negative. That shows up a lot in these problems. You got to be careful about that. Subtraction is in the formula.
Yeah.
So you have that minus.
Okay.
Gotta watch that. Okay, how are we doing back here? Okay, I like your answer on that. That does look like that matches. That looks like that matches. It looks like the Y-intercept of -4, so I think that's good. Okay. Yeah, no, it's okay. Okay, so let me go ahead and run through these, and then I want to finish up with one other type of graph. What I'm seeing out there is a lot of not setting it up in the formula correctly, and that's what you got to be kind of careful about. Okay, the first problem is just simply plugging everything in. So you have the negative 1/2 goes there, the negative 2 goes for x1. And then the 2 goes there. Okay, now what a lot of you are messing up on is you're not writing on your paper real clean, and that's why you're making mistakes. So you'd have y minus 2 equals negative 1/2 x minus negative 2. A lot of you made that mistake. You're subtracting from the formula a negative. Now, when you see a minus minus, you need to immediately change that to a plus. So that thing right there, change it to a plus. So you'd have y minus 2 equals negative 1/2 x plus 2, like that. Okay? Now, what I'm trying to get you to do is get rid of the fraction when it pops up, because that usually makes the problem a little easier. So I'm going to multiply this by 2 and the entire left side by 2. Okay? Just get rid of that denominator. So when you do that and do a distributive property here, you're going to have 2y minus 4, cross the 2's out. Now you're going to have negative 1x, and then negative 1 times 2 is minus 2. So you got to be super careful with your arithmetic when you do this, or your answer isn't going to make any sense. So now they've got rid of the fractions. So now you can add 4 to both sides. and then that's going to be 2y equals negative 1x plus 2, like that. Then you can finish up by dividing everything by 2. So you're going to get y equals negative 1/2 x plus 1. That should be the answer you should have got on that problem. Okay, now what I wanted to show you on this is see if it makes any sense in the problem. So if you plotted the point negative 2, 2, you would be left 2 up 2. If you calculated a slope of negative 1/2, you would go down 1 over 2. So when you did your graph, it should look like that. And what I want you to see is this matches up. That's a y-intercept of 1, so is that. That's a slope of negative 1/2, that's what I gave you. Tell me if that makes sense. Okay, all right. Now a lot of you messed up because of the arithmetic. When you see that minus minus, rewrite another step on the paper and make it plus. I see students do that all the time, and that's why they mess up. You want to write steps very carefully when you do. Okay, on the next one, you want to start by doing the slope. So step 1 is you want to find the slope. And I'm going to go ahead and just do the slope formula on this one. Okay, so when I do the slope, you're always going to see me do it like this. It's going to be subtract the y's. So that's 0, again, minus negative 4. You're subtracting a negative. When you do the x's, you're going to go 3 minus 0, like that. Okay? Again, there's your minus minus, so that's going to be 0 plus 4 is 4, so it's over 3. Okay, so you should get a slope of 4/3. Right, now that means what you're going to do is you're going to plug 4/3 in there. Which point do I plug in, or does it not matter? What did I say? It does not matter, okay? So I'm going to plug in probably this one and just get that plugged in. So x1 is 3, so I'm going to put that there. y1 is 0. If you use the other point, it'll give the same answer, okay? So what I'm going to have then is I'm going to have y minus 0 equals 4/3, and then x minus 3. Okay, like that. All right, now I'm going to get rid of the 3. So on this side, see, y minus 0 is just y. Okay, so I've got 4/3, x minus 3 like this. All right, so you could go ahead and distribute out if you wanted to. It's just as easy on this problem to just do this. Bring the y down and then distribute. So that's going to be 4/3 x, and then you're going to go 4/3. If you go 4/3 times 3 over 1, that's going to cross the 3's out, leaving you y equals 4 over 3x minus 4. That's the answer you should have got on that problem, and that will match what your graph looks like. So if you plotted these points, you would have 0, negative 4, and 3, 0, and you can tell that that y-intercept matches that, say. That's the idea. Okay. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways.
You got to do an extra step on multiplying the other side.
I could have. I chose to just bypass that. It still worked, though. Okay? It's just because it was already solved for y. That's why I did what I did. Okay? All right. All right, one last thing, and then we'll be finished here. Let's just kind of go over this, this last page, and then I want to show you one thing on intercepts, and then that'll take care of us. All right. So what we're going to do on this is we're going to look at horizontal and vertical lines. So we're going to graph y equals 3, and we're going to do this by making a table of values. So what this means, let's finish now. Let's get quiet so we can finish, okay? All right, so that means that y is always 3. Okay, fill it in like that. That means y is always 3. Now what is x? X can be anything. Okay, so it can be anything you want it to be. That problem says y is 3. All right, pick numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3. Put them on there. Pick any number you want for x. Now, if you plot these points, you'll have what this line looks like. So graph the point 0, 3, graph 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3. What does it look like the line looks like to you? It looks horizontal, and that's the way it always will be if your equation just has a y in it. Okay, y equals a number goes through the y-axis. It always does. It does not slant. Okay. The next problem is basically the same idea, except x this time. This doesn't have a y in it, so x is negative 4 always. All right. That's what it means. Now, in this problem, Y can be anything. Okay, so just pick whatever you want for Y. I'm just going to go 0, 1, 2, 3 again like that. Now, if you plot your points, let's see what kind of line we have. So if you go left 4, that would be 4, 0, negative 4, 1, and so forth like that. What does it look like to you? Okay, it's a vertical line. Okay, so what you're going to find on this then is this. And you want to kind of get this sorted out in your mind. It's actually very easy to graph these. If you just have a Y, only a Y, that means it's only going to touch the Y-axis. So if it only touches Y, it has to go this way. Does that make sense to you? Okay. This one, if it only has an X, it only touches X. So that's what it did. It only went through the X-axis. It never touched that. So that's how the line goes. So if you're doing X equals a number, it goes this way through the X-axis. If you do Y equals a number, this way. Does that make any sense? Students forget it all the time. They forget it. So if you forget, you can make a chart that you just have to understand. Y is always 3 in that column, X is always negative 4. Okay, a lot of stuff today. How'd you do? Okay, do your homework. Otherwise, you won't know anything. Okay. Well, whatever's on there. What's due tonight? How do you know if you don't know what's due? You go to D2L, right? D2L tells you everything you need to know. Okay? It'll tell you what's due when it's due. Okay? All right, work hard. Doing good so far. If you're having trouble, come by. Come by my office. I'm here to help. So if you need to see me, come by.